Welcome to chapter 12, the book of Hebrews. The writer, Paul, now goes in after the last chapter of showing all these examples of belief of mankind, men and women, that there's a perfection of this belief, and that's not through man, but through the person of Jesus Christ, who these people that he is writing to have recently crucified. Not necessarily the people he's writing to, but the people of Israel and Jerusalem, the rulers and so forth. And here we have the beginnings of a church with Peter and James and others, and thousands of people have now joined it. It tells us in the book of Acts. So what is facing these people? Persecution by a lot of the Jews that don't believe that Jesus did all these things, and it was all some type of a work of a charlatan or whatever, but they didn't believe, and so they started persecuting these Jewish believers. The amount of people that weren't Jews were minuscule at the very beginning. I think Philip the evangelist preached to the Ethiopian eunuch who wasn't a Jew yet. So these people now are being written to by Paul because apparently the persecution is taking its toll on some of them. Now, belief, it goes into is, you can believe in a lot of things, hope in a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to come true. But the belief that we have is going to come true. We're assured of that by God. So therefore, we believe. If you didn't really believe, then there's a problem in that you could easily fall away from whatever you think you see or somebody's telling you and giving you doubt, so you don't agree with it and you don't go with it, you don't have hope in it. And I mentioned other places about belief as far as the two men that had a business and sold it for $2 million. Each had $1 million. They decided to go to the races. And the fifth race, they said, I think Black Beauty is going to win in the fifth race. And so they went to place their bets, and the one partner bet $2 to win, and the other partner bet his whole $1 million to win. So which one had the belief? They both believed, but there's a great difference between the two. One put up a measly $2, and the other put up everything he owned. So accordingly, it begins, also we, having so great a cloud of witnesses encompassing us, that is, all of these people that are mentioned in the last chapter, the fathers and the mothers, having put aside every swelling and accessible sin, through endurance let us run the struggle being situated before us. Now here's a word you can add to the English derivatives from the Greek New Testament, number 3591. Onkos is actually in the nominative. It ends with a sigma, a swelling, and we have the word oncology for cancer, dealing with cancer, and swelling of a mass, more or less. So that word could be added. Having put aside every swelling and accessible sin, through endurance, let us run the struggle being situated before us. It's not a smooth path. It's not a smooth sailing. It can be. Many times it is. But there is that part of a struggle, and some people more than others. Right now in 2017, today I'm doing this is Easter Sunday, 2017, and many Christians were killed in a bomb in Egypt, 100, I believe, in a church celebrating Good Friday. So the struggle is not easy. Sometimes for us that are living in a peaceful country, we have a hard time understanding that. But the struggle is there, and these people, these Jews, did not have it easy. Looking to Jesus, the head and perfection of the belief. Jesus is the person that we are looking to because he lived the perfect life, who instead of the joy being situated before him, endured the cross, disdaining the shame. Don't hear that too many places. I think in the King James it has another, enduring the shame or something, but disdaining the shame. He endured it. He didn't want to go to the cross and ask the Father if it could be taken away from him. But he endured it, went to the cross, and he disdained the shame that he was there. And I'm not sure what kind of shame it was. Could have been hung up naked, or just the idea of all these sinners putting him to death and so forth, disdaining it. It wasn't something that he was looking forward to or he thought great. It was a terrible thing. And at the right of the throne of God has sat. So the sitting at the right hand of the throne, we have in book of Acts, Stephen, who was being stoned, saw Jesus standing. So he can stand or he can sit, and he's at the right of the throne. For consider the cost by the one enduring such dispute against him by the sinners. Oh, yeah, I can't imagine. Can you imagine if some people were wanting to crucify or kill you for doing something really good? You saved somebody and then they wanted to kill you. You wouldn't feel very good towards them. But yet he was able to overcome that. That you should not weary, fainting in your souls. So we are to take Jesus as our model. He went through the cross, and disdained the shame. We, as we're going to go into here, haven't even come anything close to what happened to Jesus. So he had to face this negativity in the extreme of the unbelievers. But it says, not yet unto blood have you stood firm. Now, blood, as I've mentioned other places, is a figure of speech for death. And not always, but not unto death have you stood firm, struggling against sin. And Jesus was against sin by living the perfect life and not sinning, and he went to the cross and died. But we haven't had any experience like that. At least I haven't. There may be some, but and have you been totally forgotten of the exhortation which he reasons to you as to sons? And this is the Old Testament, so the Jews would have known what he's talking about. O my son, do not have little regard for the instruction of the Lord, nor be enfeebled, being reproved by him. So Christ has went through all this. Now, the instruction of the Lord, there is instruction of the Lord, what he wants us to do, and then there is discipline by the Lord, or both. And Christ was instructed of the Lord, and we are instructed of the Lord. But then if there's a problem with our not understanding the instruction or going along with it, then a reproof comes. Don't have little regard for this instruction, nor being reproved by being feeble by being reproved, if that's what happens, if you went to that way. For the Lord loves who he corrects. Well, he says he corrects. And he whips every son whom he welcomes. Well, some people, not many people today in 2017 in the United States, if you wanted to whip or spank a child, well, you could go to jail. They would arrest you. Some people would call the police on you. And it's a terrible place that we are at, where there's this tremendous amount of undisciplined children running around, more so in certain areas than others in big cities. And so this is the whipping, but God doesn't hold back. If you endure discipline, God brings discipline as to you as sons. For who is the son whom a father does not correct? Well, in the older days, in my olden days, I'm talking about in the 40s and the 50s when I was a kid, disciplining by a father, if you were, let's say, working in a farm and you're on a tractor and you were told not to do something, but yet you knew it was wrong to do it, take the tractor and go up a certain incline of a hill that could tip over backwards, and you didn't listen to it, then the father would discipline his son. Now, that doesn't mean he has to go whip him every time something happens, but he makes it known that this is really bad what he's done, and it could be dangerous, and there's a reason for it. But the son may not understand, but hopefully he will learn through that discipline. And if you are without the help of instruction, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. So, and that's the case with a lot of people in the cities, children who are running around with one parent, and there's no discipline. They're just becoming like wild animals, and they are illegitimate. They're not sons, because one man can brag. He has recently bragged. He had like 70 children from 70 different wives, and they're bragging about it. And then the result is in some places in the cities is just utter disaster. And so there's reasons for that. So to the people that are in those areas, hopefully, if you have a father and a mother, then you listen to the instructions that they give and don't argue, but love them and thank them for telling you. So then, indeed, by the flesh of our pateras, fathers, paternal, we have correctors, and we show respect. Well, this is what you should do. Now, like I said, in some places there's no fathers, no correctors, and there's no respect. Well, shall we not then be much more submitted to the Father of the spirits and shall live? Now he's talking about God. So if you don't show respect to your parents, you probably are not going to be showing any respect to God. Probably don't know who God is. You haven't been taught. But if you do have parents that love you and they're Christians, then you need to be submitted, and then you'll be easier to be submitted to God. For they indeed, for a few days, as it seemed good to them, corrected the parents, but he does so for the advantage, for us to share in his sanctity. So this reason for the chastisement is for our sanctification, our separation, our holiness is another word, but they're both, it's not like you're some type of a holy person walking around, but you're separated from the other people. You have a discipline instructions are different than what it's in the world. Your discipline instructions come from God through your parents, and it's for an advantage for us to be separated so that we will eventually be with Christ. But any discipline by, indeed, the hand, being spanked or slapped or whatever, does not seem to be joy, no. But distress at the time, sure. I mean, you're a kid and you get spanked and you start crying, and the little kids do. But afterward, it renders peaceable fruit of righteousness to the ones having been exercised by it. I had a very lenient father to the extreme. He would never discipline me at all when I was a child. My mother, she didn't discipline me very much either. She told me what was right or wrong. My father didn't do anything like that. But and I lost respect for him for a long time. In my teenage years, it's like, well, if you're not going to tell me what I'm doing right or wrong, then, what kind of father are you? And so you lose respect for that kind of a person. But one that a father, and I had, friends of parents that if they discipline, at least they care. it's like it without any caring and no discipline, it's terrible. So having a father that cares enough to discipline you is a wonderful thing. And I think eventually a young person sees that. Well, therefore, the weakened hands and the disabled knees re-erect. So they must have had this opposite of a weakness, weakened hands and disabled knees re-erect. They were just crumbling. And so the writer here is trying to encourage them to get back in line with Christ and his instructions. And make straight tracks to your feet and go the correct way. That the lame should not be turned aside, but rather should be healed. So a person that is lame spiritually would realize that they're in the wrong mindset, that their mindset is of the world, the flesh, the devil, and they need to be turned and healed. And God can do that at any time we ask him to. And the best way to do that, I believe, is when we do ask, is start reading the Bible. If you're not spending much time in the Bible, then you're really missing out on a lot of healing, actually. If you're going through a hard time, the Bible is the best comfort that you can have through the Holy Spirit. The Comforter is called, Paraclete. So therefore, pursue peace with all. Now, maybe these people were having fights with the others, and that fighting was taking over the mindset instead of the peace, because they had to defend themselves and so forth. Not an easy place to be when people are attacking you. And the sanctification, the Lord, apart from which no one shall see the Lord. We have to be separated to the Lord, overseeing, lest any should lack from the favor of God. So without these things, then the favor of God is held back because we're not in the right place to accept it. Lest any root of bitterness germinating upward should be trouble. And through this many should be defiled. A root of bitterness. Now, some people can get very mad at God. And I've been mad at God. But if you allow it to go and germinate upward, it can be a real problem. And a lot of times people want things to go their way, and they don't want any problems. They want to do what they want to do, and they're like spoiled children, which I was at one time. And so this it keeps growing and growing, and if it's with God, then this bitterness towards God can cause a person to want to leave God because they see God as the cause of their being bitter and the problems. But it's just an inaccurate view of what's happening to you, and God is working. Because here, this is what it's all about, is that Christ went through all this, and so should we. We just have to do it. And through this, many have been defiled. Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau. The fornicator, somebody is having sex with women all the time and not being married, or a profane person as Esau, who for one portion of food delivered over his rights of the firstborn. The Esau and Jacob and Esau, the two brothers. Jacob sold the rights to his brother basically because of he wanted some food coming from the field. For you understand that also afterwards, wanting to inherit the blessing, he was rejected because his brother tricked mother and Rebekah and tricked Isaac by putting rough clothes on Jacob, and he received the blessing by stealth. And afterwards, when Esau found out, he was very mad and he didn't want that, and he tried to it says, for a place was not found for repentance, though with tears he sought it. Now, what is it? I think he sought the blessing, and he didn't do the right thing, and then he wanted the blessing, but Isaac couldn't give him the same blessing, because his first blessing was that Esau the younger would serve, the older would serve the younger. For you have not come forward to the mountain being handled. This is Mount Sinai, when all the people were in front of the mountain, coming through from Egypt through the wilderness, and being kindled with fire, and to dimness, and to darkness, and to storm. It was an awesome display that was going on this mountain. It wasn't just a regular rainstorm, but it was something to see, something to behold. And these people were afraid. And to the trumpets sounds, all this trumpet sound was going on while the same thing. And to the voice of utterances, of which the ones hearing asked pardon for the word to not proceed to them. They didn't want anything to do with it. They, let Moses go and up and talk to God, not us. For they could not bear the giving of orders, saying, and if a beast should touch lightly upon the mountain, it shall be stoned or shot with an arrow. And the directions were very specific and shrill. It was like, well, this is it. You can't do anything but this. And so fearful was the visible display, Moses said, I'm frightened and trembling. And that is, has the dagger here, so that down below that would be Deuteronomy 9:19. But you have come forward to Mount Zion, and the city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem. Well, that's the new Jerusalem that comes down out of heaven. It mentions it here. Paul does, and not only in the book of Revelation. And the heavenly Jerusalem, this is what we're coming to. It's not something like a mountain that was on fire and all these things. When we stand in front of God at the judgment, it's going to be an awesome thing. I mean, I don't know how it will be shaking, or if you don't have Jesus, you don't have any hope. Boy, I can't imagine what a person would be like, but knowing all the things that they've done, and all the people have told them what not to do and who to listen to, and they've ignored it all, and finally they've come to the judge. I mean, if you went to the judge, I've seen pictures on TV where people have went to the judge for things like on earth, like a murder or rape or something that was really terrible, and they get many years or death. And that just breaks these people. They start crying and screaming, and it's just horrible. The people around them. So this is nothing compared to when we stand in front of the living God. Ooh. And to myriads of angels who are there. I mean, we're going to be a spectacle to all these heavenly beings in our sin. Oh, boy. To the festival and to the assembly of the firstborn. That is the ones that are of believe in Jesus, so they're going to be there, and if we are of them, then the respite to us compared to what's happening to the others is night and day. Having been registered in the heavens, in the book, and to God the judge of all, and to spirits of just ones, having been perfected. And this is what we'll be facing. And Jesus, the mediator of the Naos covenant, the new, we get the word new, neo, and to the blood of sprinkling, speaking better than the one of Abel. And the one of Abel is the sacrifice. Cain killed Abel, and Abel had the correct sacrifice of the meat, the animal who he slew. So Jesus has the blood of sprinkling on him. And it's better than the sprinkling of an animal for us. Well, take heed that you should not refuse the one speaking. And the people in Sinai refused the divine instruction. Probably, that's what I think it's talking about. For if those did not flee, escaping, receiving the one refusing the one receiving a divine judgment upon the earth, how much more we, the ones turning away the one from the heavens, Jesus. And he's talking to the Jews many of them had turned away from Jesus, of whose voice the earth shook then. But now he has promised, God in the Old Testament says, still once more, I will shake not only the earth, but also the heaven. So the Jews knew that this was a quotation and something is going to happen, and that's there in Haggai 2:6. Go down to the bottom, you see all these places. You can go in Haggai 2:6, and it would have Hebrews 12, where is that at? 12:26. And the saying, still once more, manifests the transposition of the things being shaken as things being made, that the things not being shaken should abide. The things being shaken are something that's physical, and it can be shaken and then torn apart and cease to exist. But the things that cannot be shaken, love, giving help to the enemy or giving help to anybody, donations to people, money, good works, helping people in various ways, all these things will not be shaken. They're not physical. They're not part of the world. They'll still go on. Therefore, receiving a kingdom unshaken, so when we go there, we're going to belong to a kingdom. We're no longer citizens of the earth, but we're subjects of King Jesus. We should have favor by which we should serve God pleasantly with respect and veneration. So knowing where we're going, we should be like we're there now. We're at the door of heaven. Like I'm right here holding the door, ready to open it up. Whatever, and if I opened it up, I'd be there. We on this other side of the door should be in the place that we would want to be when we open that door, with respect and veneration. I was thinking, exactly what is veneration? I looked it up in the dictionary, and it had a veneration, awe, inspired by the dignity, wisdom, dedication, or talent of a person, or in this case, God. You're inspired by Him. So we should serve God pleasantly and inspired by the things of God, because we love Him, or for even our God is a consuming fire. That's the alternative. Sometimes people can come to the Lord through fear. Sometimes they come through love. He's a consuming fire, but yet the consummation of the fire to the person that's being tested, it's not consuming. The fire cleanses. Fire has different properties. It can destroy, like trees, and consume things, and it can clean the dross out of gold when they put it under the fire and melt it. God is that. He does all these things. The last chapter of Hebrews is our next seminar, chapter 13, the concluding exhortations to these Hebrews, Jews, and hope you'll join us in chapter 13, and God bless.